to blow it up.
Overnight, President Trump ordered stealth bombers to strike at the heart of Iran's nuclear program.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace.
Hours after the strikes, Iran fired another barrage of missiles against Israel. At least 20 people have been injured. And also on the program, the death toll keeps on rising from Israel's assault on Gaza. Palestinians desperate for aid are being killed.
Spike needs to launch his bold new delivery business online without costs going sky high. He'll need
Iran's foreign minister is accusing the U.S. of betraying diplomacy. Abbas Araghchi has made the comments in the past hour following the U.S. military's attack on Iran's 3 big nuclear sites. President Donald Trump ordered the strikes on the Fordo, Natanz and Isfahan plants, saying it was to prevent any nuclear threat from Tehran. Now, these are some of the images in the aftermath of the Fordo attack. The uranium enrichment facility is estimated to be 80 meters underground. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency has called for an emergency board meeting.
We were in the middle of talks with the United States when Israelis blew it up. And again, we were in the middle of talks and negotiation with Europeans, happened only 2 days ago in Geneva, when this time Americans decided to blow it up. So we were in diplomacy, but we were attacked militarily. So it was not Iran, but the US who betrayed diplomacy. They betrayed negotiations. When at the middle of negotiations with us, they gave green light to Israelis.
Well, we're going to be unpacking the latest developments with our correspondents in Tehran, Amman and Washington, D.C. First, we're going to go to Sinem Kosioglu in Istanbul. She was at the press conference where Iran's foreign minister has been speaking. I was just reading through some of the notes that have been made after that press conference. Pretty clear where Abbas Araghchi believes the blame for what is going on lies with the U.S., not only the U.S., of course, but with the IAEA as well. Give us a summary of your thoughts about what was going on.
Well, actually, Abbas Araghchi repeated what he has been tweeting and sharing since yesterday as he arrived in Istanbul after his talks with the European diplomats. And he underlined that his country was on the table for negotiations, but he was betrayed by the United States, by the European countries. And he said that they are ready to respond. They will be responding. And according to the Iranian diplomacy tradition, the conventions of the Iranian diplomacy, they need to respond. Whether it will be a small response or a big one, no one has any idea, but they sure are planning for an attack. When he was asked another question, he mentioned that he doesn't have the authority to reveal what Iran is going to do next, but his sentence was this: we will respond. And apparently Iran is upset about what has been going on because they say their nuclear project was peaceful and they weren't aiming for a nuclear weapon, and they have been accusing the International Atomic Agency for not being clear with the United States. If they were clear about saying that they haven't enriched uranium for a nuclear weapon and there was no risk, this wouldn't happen as per the Iranian authorities and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. That's why he's asking for the UN Security Council for an emergency meeting. Iran's UN ambassador wrote a letter to the UN regarding this request early morning on Sunday. And he's also calling on the International Atomic Agency to do its job, to be in line with international law and binding agreements. And when he was asked about whether Iran is planning to withdraw from the non-proliferation treaty. Again, he said that if Iran is following the rules, but no others are following, then what is the use of those international treaties and organizations? Apparently now they are also calculating the damages of these attacks, recent attacks by the United States over the night, the Israeli attacks so far, and they are planning for their next move, which no one has any idea about yet. Back to you.
Sinem, as I understand it as well, he was also, however, calling for a UN Security Council meeting, an emergency meeting to discuss what's been going on.
Well, yes, this is what they are aiming for, because even at the OIC summit in Istanbul, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Countries, their foreign ministers have been gathering since yesterday. The aim was to make a call to the UN Security Council to push for further intervention on Israel. But over the night, we saw that the United States attacked the nuclear facilities of Iran, and now this gets more vigilant because the U.S. is the strongest member of the United Nations. But this is what Mr. Arakci mentioned. He said the U.S. actually violated the United Nations Charter. They actually cheated on their own voters. This is what he said. We haven't heard about any emergency meeting yet, but probably the UN Security Council is going to respond this very quickly, and we will hear. But what the UN Security Council will do is also another question, because on one side you have the strongest member, United States, and Israel, who is a very strong element apparently in the domestic politics of the United States as well. It will be an interesting scene to wait and see.
Sinem, thank you very much indeed. Sinem Kosioglu there talking to us from Istanbul. We're going to go to Ali Hashim in the Iranian capital, Tehran. Perhaps not a surprise, the tone that Iran's foreign minister was giving in that statement, clearly condemning the actions of the US, Israel, and also the IAEA.
Let's start with the manual method. First, open Chrome. Click the three dots in the top right.
Well, Rob, for now, what we have is two layers of Iranian response to what happened. So we don't know yet what's the retaliation. What we saw now from Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Istanbul, add to that what we heard from the IRGC here in Tehran, is just an ambiguous response to what happened. Both the foreign ministry that Mr. Araghchi represents and the IRGC are under the Supreme National Security Council. So when the Supreme National Security Council here in Iran decides what's the retaliation, then we will hear the second part of the answer. And that's why we heard Mr. Araghchi saying in his answers that he is not in a position right now to say what they are going to do. And there are several options in front of Iran. The main issue is that when this council convenes and takes the decision, then Mr. Araghchi, the IRGC, who I'm going to read their statement, they issued a statement just a few minutes ago also, saying that Washington has now placed itself on the front line of aggression by directly attacking peaceful installations. They also said that the locations from which the aircraft involved in this aggression took off have been identified and under surveillance. And as they also said that they've repeatedly declared the number and scale of U.S. military bases in the region are not source of strength, rather a major vulnerability. And that in response to the act of aggression, the attacks will continue on Israel, what they call the Operation True Promise Tree, will continue with a precise, targeted, and severe manner against the infrastructure, strategic centers, and interests of the Israelis. Furthermore, today's act of aggression by the terrorist U.S. regime, as per the statement, has compelled the Islamic Republic of Iran, within its legitimate right to self-defense, to consider responses that go beyond the delusional calculations. Now, this is what the IRGC said. Even Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. Now, there are several automatic responses that people would have expected. For example, exiting the non-proliferation treaty. He criticized the non-proliferation situation right now that the United States has put the world in, but he did not touch on this. Also, with respect to closing the Hormuz Strait, which was something we heard a lot on TV, the Iranian officials been saying that immediately they are going to close this strait. There's no mention of this, neither the foreign minister nor the IRGC, also with respect to the attacks. So what we can just wrap now, and the takeaway of what we heard from Araghchi and the IRGC is that till the moment, the position is ambiguous. They're all waiting the National Security Council to agree on the manner of the retaliation, and then we'll start hearing from the Iranians.
Yeah, I'm just reading through the statement that you've been referring to there, Ali, and I understand what you mean about it being somewhat ambiguous and leaving the kind of door open for the IRGC and for Iran generally in terms of its response. I would also imagine that the level and direction of the response is also going to be determined by the level of damage that the nuclear facilities in Iran have sustained. Do we have any indication yet of what kind of damage has been done by the US attacks?
Well, Rob, we have to take into consideration a major issue here. The sovereignty of Iran has been breached. This alone, according to the Iranian narrative, requires a response. Now, regardless of what's the amount of damage. Now, according to what we've been hearing from Iranian officials, from the Iranian nuclear agency, from the advisor to the parliament, that the amount of damage is not complete. I mean, the idea is that the places, the facilities were not completely destroyed. And also, what we've been hearing from Behrouz Kamalvandi, the spokesperson to the Iranian nuclear agency in the past days, he said that Iran has already transported and transferred the enriched uranium stockpile and also a lot of technology from that place. The satellite imagery shows more than 20 trucks moving from the Fordow nuclear facility and outside on the 20th and the 21st of June. Also, the UK-based website Amouage revealed, according to the reporting, that the United States already told Iran in advance that it's going to hit here and there, and the timing. So the Iranians had a lot of time, something similar to what happened in Ain al-Assad in 2020 when Iran informed the Americans in advance to their retaliation to the killing of General Soleimani.
Ali Hashem in Tehran there. Ali, thank you very much indeed. We're going to go to Noor Odeh. She's joining us from Jordan's capital, and she's in Amman because the Israeli government's banned Al Jazeera from reporting inside Israel and the occupied West Bank. So while those attacks were going on by the US in response to that, we've also had Iranian attacks on Israel. What's been happening?
Rob, two successive volleys of about 27 missiles came from Iran to Israeli cities, making impact in Haifa and the larger Tel Aviv area, and Rishon LeZion, in Bat Yam, and other neighborhoods. There weren't a lot of casualties reported, despite the extensive damage that we saw to buildings, especially in the Tel Aviv area. 26 Israelis injured, one moderately. We are also hearing about an investigation launched by the Israeli army because a missile made impact in Haifa before the sirens went off. Now, most probably, according to some estimate, that was an interception missile, but we remain, waiting for the outcome of that investigation if it is made public, because again, the Israeli military censor controls the knowledge that we can share with our viewers during these days, because the restrictions are really severe, and the punishment could be imprisonment for journalists who share information not cleared by the censor.
Noor, what's been the wider reaction in Israel, with Israelis waking up to the news that they have been attacked, but of course also to the news of the US strikes in Iran?
Well, the news of the U.S. strike was received with a lot of celebration in Israel. Politically speaking, this was a big win for Benjamin Netanyahu after decades of lobbying for U.S. involvement, for the U.S. taking the lead in attacking Iran because Israel doesn't have the technical capacity to attack Fordo, for example. He has done it. And so this is something that he really highlighted and focused on in his message in Hebrew. In English, he mostly showered Donald Trump with praise. Some of his ministers even said that Donald Trump was a messenger of God because of what he did. And of course, even the opposition leaders, even people who are on the opposite side of politics from Netanyahu, welcomed the U.S. action and thanked Donald Trump for standing with Israel. The Israeli president as well thanking Donald Trump and saying that this was a testament to that strategic, unshakable bond between the two countries. Billboards in Tel Aviv have come up thanking Donald Trump for what he did. But of course, when you offset that with the missiles still coming in, with the prospect of even more Iranian retaliation, which we, still uncertain what kind of shape it would take, and the fact that more restrictions have been imposed on ordinary daily tasks in Israel because of that anticipation, then questions might arise, and they are already being put forward by some commentators, not all, although in the larger Jewish Israeli public, there is a lot of support for attacking Iran.
That's Noor O'Day in Jordan's capital, Amman. Noor, thank you very much indeed. Well, Donald Trump's called on Iran to make peace quickly or risk further military action. We're going to be live in Washington, D.C. in a moment. But first, this report from our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett.
Just days after President Donald Trump said he would decide within 2 weeks whether to strike Iran, the U.S. commander-in-chief gave the order to attack.
Thank you very much.
Making the announcement Saturday night from the White House.
Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
The White House releasing these photos of Trump, his vice president, and top advisors watching the strikes unfold from the Situation Room. Using B-2 bombers, Trump says a payload of 30,000-pound bombs dropped on the Fordo nuclear facility. Tomahawk missiles were reportedly used to destroy the Natanz and Esfahan sites. Prior to the attack, Trump had been pushing Iran to make a deal to give up all nuclear enrichment, so the sovereign nation couldn't build a nuclear weapon. But Trump's 60-day deadline passed, and there was still no agreement. On day 61, Israeli fighter jets took action, hitting Tehran and other cities last week, killing some of Iran's top scientists and military officials. On Saturday, Trump said Israel's fight is also America's fight.
We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel.
Criticism from congressional Democrats was swift. Senator Chris Murphy posting on X, Trump has been goaded into these strikes by the perpetual cheerleader of war in the Middle East. All my thoughts tonight are for the safety of our personnel in the region. The U.S. has reportedly reached out to Iran, indicating the strikes were limited. Regime change isn't planned. The Trump administration hopes Iran will now return to the negotiating table, warning Iran if there's retaliation, there'll be more attacks.
There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left.
The White House has not yet released an assessment of just how much damage was caused by the U.S. strikes on Iran's 3 nuclear sites. That bomb damage assessment is likely to be made public when the Secretary of Defense holds his briefing at the Pentagon on Sunday. Kimberly Halkett, Al Jazeera, the White House.
Hey, how's that New Year's resolution going? What are you talking about? You know, that YouTube channel you say you're going to start? Well...
Alan Fisher's joining us from Washington, D.C. Alan, I think it's about 6:20 in the morning where you are. Are we getting any sort of indication of the reactions? Obviously, we've had the reactions from congressional members and so on, but the public is waking up to this. And so one would imagine is the White House. What are we hearing?
I mean, obviously, there's no monolith in the United States. You can't say that the American people are acting this way or this way. Certainly, the politicians reflect the broad feeling